How could we not talk about the hot topic of the week, which is what I would call tariff turmoil? So in his second term, President Donald Trump has imposed some very significant tariffs on many countries around the world. China, being one of the most strategic but challenging partners of the US, has been faced with a 125% tariff rate. Now, Trump has only 2 days ago issued a 90-day stay order because we saw the stock markets were affected, interest rates were affected, etc. But let's break this down a little bit. Countries impose tariffs on imports because they want to produce more or improve what's happening in their domestic market in terms of manufacturing. And Trump's whole ethos now is to make America better, etc. It's to have the manufacturing and production in America and to stop other countries from dumping cheap products into America. Now, when you look at the pros and cons, I know India did this when it had its Mahalanobis model, where it restricted imports coming in to give a big boost to the Indian manufacturing industry, and then India became a country that was self-sufficient in many respects. You can see over time and over history the use of tariffs in sort of controlling how domestic markets work and how domestic consumption works and how international trade works. But the reality of the situation and the moment is that the world has never been as seamless and integrated in terms of logistics, in terms of production, in terms of exports and imports and things like this. And therefore, a strong look will have to be taken by the Trump administration, especially if now they have issued a stay, a 90-day stay, to mitigate the situation around the world that has arisen as a result of the news of the tariffs. Now, let's break this down a little bit more into the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Now, the UAE and Saudi Arabia and the GCC are generally sort of a US kind of neutral, I would say, and we've ended up with 10% tariffs. Now, it's very interesting to see one of the biggest exports from the UAE is actually aluminum. And if you look at the numbers of March of last year versus March of this year, if I'm not mistaken, the aluminum exports to the US by the UAE were around 16 million tons or so. And this year, there were 68 million tons. Now, part of this could be hoarding as a result of the fact that many businesses knew these tariffs were going to come in play. And any of this type of movement would dramatically and drastically affect how logistics works, so basically shipping companies and how goods move around the world because of the tariff situation, and would deeply impact the UAE's aluminum industry as well if we were struck with higher tariffs, etc. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen. It's a super bold move. As I said, there are pros and cons of tariffs where you're trying to protect yourself from a domestic standpoint. You're trying to promote a domestic manufacturing and a domestic consumption of locally produced goods. But can you take the leap? Can you make a huge jump in just 6 months or a year if your domestic production has been low and you have been dependent on other countries to supply things to you? However, the US is a trading partner for many, many countries of the world and is a significant trading partner for many of these countries. So such tariffs bring about a significant economic impact. And it is a negotiating tool for any country, right? So if I do want to export to the US, I'm struck with a huge tariff. I might say, okay, we will accept US goods at 0 tariff or a much lower tariff. And this gives countries like the US more negotiating power. So hopefully I've explained this in the shortest possible time for a very complex topic. Thank you so much for watching, and let's keep an eye on tariff turmoil. Oh, PS, I wanted to clarify, me wearing red for this video is simply a coincidence.